The morning it all started looked like any other morning on my land. The sun had barely climbed over the eastern ridge, casting long golden streaks across the 30-acre field that had been in my family for nearly 70 years. The grass moved gently in the wind, rippling like waves across a quiet green ocean. My grandfather used to say land had a memory. If you treated it well, it treated you well. That morning, though, the land looked different. Not because of the grass. Not because of the sky. Because of the cars. At first I thought I was seeing things. I stood on my porch holding a mug of coffee, squinting across the field. There were at least 15 vehicles scattered, near the gravel road that cut along the edge of my property. Sedans, SUVs, a couple of pickup trucks, parked in a sloppy line like someone had drawn a parking lot with their eyes closed. I blinked. Then I set the coffee down. Now what the hell is this? My dog, Rusty, lifted his head from the porch floor, but didn't bother getting up. I walked down the steps, boots crunching on gravel, and headed toward the field. As I got closer, the situation became clearer and stranger. These weren't random cars. They were parked neatly between two rows of little orange traffic cones. Traffic cones. In my field. I stopped dead in my tracks. Are you kidding me? I looked around, expecting to see someone directing traffic or waving people in. Nothing. Just a quiet morning, and a parking lot that absolutely did not belong there. Then another car rolled in. A silver sedan turned off the county road, drove through my gate like it had every right to be there, and pulled into the field beside the others. I walked straight toward it. The driver stepped out, a woman in sunglasses holding a travel mug. "Morning," she said casually. "Morning," I replied slowly. "Mind telling me what you're doing on my property?" She looked confused. "Parking." I waited. She looked around again, suddenly uncertain. "Overflow parking for the neighborhood." My eyebrow lifted. "What neighborhood?" She pointed across the road. And that's when it clicked. Across the road sat the new subdivision that had been built 2 years ago. Rows of identical houses with manicured lawns, decorative mailboxes, and one very active homeowners association. I had already had my share of minor run-ins with them. Complaints about my tractor being an eyesore. Letters about my fence not matching community aesthetics. One woman had even asked if I could schedule my roosters crowing, but turning my field into a parking lot. That was a new one. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "this is private property." Her face shifted from confusion to concern. But the HOA said, "Your HOA doesn't own this land." She stared at me. "Oh." Behind us another SUV pulled in. I sighed. This was going to be a long day. Within an hour, I had personally turned away 8 cars. Each one told me the same thing. The HOA had sent out a neighborhood notice explaining that the community clubhouse was hosting a large weekend event. "That field," I repeated. "Well, it's unused," he said casually. I stared at him. "Unused?" "Yes." "So the board approved it for overflow parking during events." My jaw tightened. "You approved land you don't own." "Well," he said slowly, "it's just temporary. Get the cars off it." He smiled the tight kind of smile people use when they think they're being reasonable. "Sir, we've already informed the residents." "That sounds like your problem." A woman beside him spoke up. "It's just grass." I looked at her. "Lady, that grass grows the hay that feeds my cattle through winter." Silence. Then the clipboard guy sighed like I was being difficult. "Look," he said, "moving everyone now would be disruptive." I leaned forward slightly. "Then I suggest you start disrupting. Because those cars are leaving. Today." By the time I walked back home, more cars had arrived. 30 of them now. My field looked like a used car dealership. I stood there watching another vehicle roll through my gate. The driver waved cheerfully. That's when I realized something. They weren't going to stop. The HOA had told them the land was approved. And people believe signs more than they believe landowners. I turned and walked toward the equipment shed. Rusty followed. Inside sat my 2 tractors. One was an old green diesel beast my father had bought 40 years ago. The other was newer, heavier, and strong enough to pull a house if needed. I climbed onto the first tractor. The engine roared to life. Rusty barked once like he approved. Then I drove toward the gate. Cars kept arriving. Drivers slowed when they saw the tractor rolling toward the entrance. I positioned it sideways across the gate. Then I drove back for the second one. 10 minutes later, both tractors sat nose to nose across the entrance, like two metal bouncers guarding a nightclub. The next car pulled up. The driver rolled down his window. We're supposed to park here." "Not today," I said. He pointed at a sign someone had stuck in the ground that read, walked over, pulled the sign out, and tossed it into the ditch. "Sign's gone," I said. "Parking's closed." It didn't take long. About 40 minutes later, a white SUV pulled up to the tractors. Out stepped the clipboard guy. He looked at the tractors, then at me. "Sir," he said carefully, "you're blocking the parking area." "Yes. That area is designated for the community event. Not by me." He crossed his arms. "You're causing a disruption." I laughed. "You parked 40 cars in my hay field. It's temporary. So, is this blockade?" People were starting to gather behind him. Residents who had arrived expecting easy parking. Instead, they were staring at two tractors and one very stubborn landowner. The clipboard guy lowered his voice. "We could involve authorities." I shrugged. "Feel free." So he did. About 30 minutes later, a sheriff's truck rolled up. The deputy stepped out, took one look at the tractors, and walked toward me. "You the property owner?" "Yes, sir." He nodded. "You block the entrance?" "Yes, sir." He glanced across the field at the parked cars. Then he looked at the HOA guy. "You authorize this parking?" The clipboard guy straightened. "Yes." "The community approved use of this field." The deputy asked the obvious question. "Did the owner approve it?" Silence. The deputy looked back at me. "You give permission?" "Nope." He sighed, then turned back to the HOA. "Well," he said, "that's trespassing." The clipboard guy's face went pale. "What?" "You can't use private property without permission." "But it's just grass." The deputy cut him off. "Doesn't matter if it's grass or gold." He gestured to the cars. "You're gonna need to move these." One by one. Residents groaned. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked annoyed at the HOA. I just leaned against my tractor and watched the slow parade of vehicles drive out of my field. It took nearly 2 hours to clear the field. By the end, the grass was flattened and the tire marks looked like someone had hosted a monster truck rally. The HOA guy came back over when the last car left. "We could have handled this differently," he said. I nodded. "Yeah. You could have contacted us." I stared at him. "You parked cars on my land." He opened his mouth, closed it again. Finally, he muttered something about miscommunication and walked away. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the HOA. They wanted to fine me for disrupting a community event. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. That letter ended up framed on my barn wall, right next to a photo of the two tractors blocking the gate. A reminder that sometimes the simplest solution is also the most satisfying. 2 tractors, 1 gate, and a field that was never a parking lot again.